So thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Keith Grossman. I'm the president at Moonpay. When we were asked, and David asked, what do you want to call a panel about blockchain technology and AI? We stepped back and I said to him, I think it should be named faster, cheaper, more efficient. Why? Because ultimately that's the trend line that is happening today with technology, right? The world's just getting extraordinarily fast with AI. It's becoming more efficient as intermediaries get disrupted, and that is blockchain technology. And it's ultimately getting cheaper as intermediaries get removed. And so on the panel today, we have Ivan Soto-Wright, who is the co-founder and CEO of Moonpay. I'm slightly biased towards that guest. We have Lila from NEA, and we have John from Coinbase. And before we go, John, Lila, and Ivan, I can give your bio, but John, you and I know each other very well. Since I know you won't say this, I'll start by just simply saying, if you've read the book Rigged by Ben Mesrick, John is the main character in Rigged. It is not about crypto. It is actually about traditional finance. I want to make sure people know. But he set up the New York Mercantile Exchange, and he's also an MIT Fellows. He's just a humble individual. He would never bring this up himself. And so, John, will you give your bio? And then, Lila, will you give yours as well, please?
That's very kind of you, Keith. And it's always intimidating being here with two technologists. So I am a technology-adjacent individual, not a technologist myself. So as Keith mentioned, my background is in traditional asset classes like commodities. I was head of strategy for the largest commodities exchange in the world, the NYMEX. And now I do a similar job for Coinbase. Salient to artificial intelligence is I'm lucky enough to be a fellow at MIT's CSAIL lab. That's the largest artificial intelligence lab of any academic institution in the US. And so I get to be around the really, really smart people who are actually building the tech and kind of see where we will probably be in 18 months to 3 years.
Yeah, it's hard to follow. I am the technologist, and trust me, we're not that scary. And I've been technologist for as long as I can remember. I spent my last 7 years taking AI out of the lab, would I say, for Microsoft, and turning it into product and helping pivot the company towards AI. But I've done AI since it was a very, very niche and boring and weird thing that people would look at me askew and wonder why am I doing that? And the neural nets that we have right now, we're only 3 levels deep. And before that, I was CEO of many companies, some that I started, some that you probably know, like Wikipedia, and working around the globe.
Wow, amazing. And Ivan, do you want to give a few sentences on yourself as well?
Yeah, so my background was I came from traditional finance. I came from the pension fund world, so I understood how large money movement worked, essentially how all these asset classes fit together. And I saw crypto as a new asset class, and I saw a huge opportunity. It was a very inefficient market when we started, but I really believe this technology is the future. We're going to see money movement over this new internet superhighway, which is called the blockchain. And our job is really to make that journey simpler. So we build the tools and the infrastructure to build the backwards compatibility to the existing financial system to make it easier for people to participate in this new crypto economy.
So we had a 4th panelist, since if anyone's paying attention, every Zeta panel essentially has 4 people on it and a moderator. But the 4th panelist, Congresswoman Maria Salazar, could not make it due to the government shutdown. And so I just wanted to explain why we're the odd panel with only 3. So there's so much to be talking about right now between blockchain technology and AI. On one end, there's Sora, where people are seeing this nonstop. And one of the things I want to address is going to be the watermarks that are on it, because that's super important, and that's going to ultimately tie back to blockchain technology. But before we get there, I feel like there's an underpinning that we should discuss first. And Ivan, I'll throw it over to you. From an infrastructural level, what is happening with blockchain technologies, and how does it sort of ultimately tie into an AI sort of future?
So the simplest way to understand crypto is to think of it like an ownership technology. If you have your bank app and you open up your bank app and you look at your balance, that's really an IOU. The bank, we probably loaning it out, they actually claim it as a liability. If you think of crypto, the reason why I found it so appealing was this idea of a wallet. Anyone with an internet connection can spin up a crypto wallet anywhere in the world. Crypto comes from the word for cryptography. You essentially have a private key that underpins your public wallet address, and you're in control of that money. So when I went out to start Moonpay, really the thinking was we need to make it easy for people to start taking advantage of this new technology layer. If you think about money movement today, or just historically, it's been very inefficient. Essentially, you have different financial systems in different parts of the world, and as a result, it's very expensive, full of friction to move money from A to B. The next generation, my generation, doesn't believe in waiting days for money to clear. They want to see it instant. They want to make it feel just as native as the internet. We have now been given these internet-based rails, which is essentially the blockchain. And so really our thinking is over time, people opt into the more efficient system. So we think that blockchains are ultimately going to be the settlement layers for all sorts of value movement. And we're at the early phases of this. Right now, most people are probably familiar in this audience of Bitcoin and Ethereum and some of these major tokens. You might have heard about stable coins. These are all new forms of tokenized assets that move on these rails. So really, our job is to make it simpler for people to be able to use their debit card, to be able to use their bank account and interact with this new system. Now, how does that play into AI? AI is ultimately a more efficient technology for information, right? And so in the same way that crypto is democratizing ownership with AI, you're essentially going to be able to have a smart programmable layer connected to your money. Imagine a world where you tell AI, I'd like to make a purchase, and for that to automatically happen seamlessly, irrespective of the currency, irrespective of the infrastructure on the other side of the equation. And so we think that more and more transactions are going to ultimately move over blockchains, and essentially AI agents are going to be an extension of you. You're going to start asking it to do all sorts of things related to your finances, and it will automate it for you.
So I want to throw it over to you, right? Like, how do you start to see the interplay taking place with, some of the traditional companies in the space and like where disruption will occur?
Well, I mean, AI is fundamentally an efficiency technology. So what we're seeing is it's affecting the legacy companies probably the most, and this is where we're going to see in the next couple of years a major break between those who are adopting rapidly and those who are lagging behind. Because in industries like health or actually finance, supply chains, et cetera, right, manufacturing, we're seeing massive improvements, double-digit improvements with deployments of AI. So it's wiping out massive inefficiencies. And the more paper-based sort of quote-unquote, we took during the internet era, we took paper and then we turned it digital, but in reality, it's still documents, right? The more document-based is your system, the more efficiencies you're going to gain. So if you look at, KYC processes within banks, they're incredibly laborsome. They're highly manual. There's, gazillions of clicks, sometimes takes weeks, if not months, to run those processes. That is going to drop down by the factor of 10.
Okay, but can I just on that note for 1 second, AI is sort of as confusing of a catchphrase as crypto is, right? Like, I always say to people, because I used to be in the media industry, it's very easy to understand a vertical category, right? If you're print, you're either a magazine or a newspaper or you're not, right? If you're television, linear television, you're either television or you're not. If you're radio, terrestrial radio, you're either terrestrial radio or you're not. If you're digital, you're a horizontal category, right? So you can be digital text, you can be digital audio, you can be digital video. You could share, you could target in ways that you've never been able to do before. And all crypto is an extension of digital, right? So if it can be digitized, it can also be tokenized. So crypto is a horizontal category as well. And then there's many verticals within crypto. There's Bitcoin, which has its own USP. There's stable coins, which has its own USP. There's meme coins, which has its own USP, which is gambling. But like AI is sort of like crypto, where it is a horizontal category, and people just use the term AI. How do you, and like you had an amazing vantage point. You were 7 years, right, as deputy CTO at Microsoft. How do you separate the signal from the noise?
At the end of the day, I like to, I'm a scientist, right? I want to measure everything. If I can't measure it in some way improvement, it doesn't matter. So I'll give you an example. So when we first saw when we first saw OpenAI, and they were on GPT-3, I think, at the time, and there was a lot of arguments between people whether this is going to go somewhere, is this good enough, are we still, is this going to be sort of the future of how we encode information? And actually, Bill Gates came up with this and basically said, hey, you have to show me that this system is going to pass AP bio exam, right? And that's how I'm going to believe that this is something valuable, right? So when the guys came back and they brought the system back with GPT-4, right? It was passing all of AP exams. It was passing LSAT. It was passing MCAT. So it's quantifiable result and quantifiable improvement. And that is how I look at the companies too. Is the result quantifiable? Is it significant? Is it repeatable? The challenge right now is that these results are increasing in an order of magnitude in a matter of months, not years right now. And when you compound this with what's happening with the blockchain, which is another level of improvement, we have a compounding effect on productivity. And that is why we're seeing so much disruption, and we'll see more disruption in the labor force around it.
Awesome. Now, I know everyone in the audience might think I'm biased towards Ivan, but I've actually known John longer, right? And so even though John is at a centralized exchange and we're decentralized maxis, John, it is important to ask you about institutions, right? Because you sit on sort of the largest adoption point of the space. So it's when institutions come, then all of a sudden it's really been sort of validated, right? So how are you seeing this evolution take place?
So around the intersection of AI and blockchain specifically.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and institutions.
And I liked your example. So I'll piggyback off of that, and I'll just focus on two of the verticals and give just two examples of where I see real adoption and use cases being applied. So I think of the intersection of AI and blockchain quite simply. If AI is scalable intelligence and blockchain is scalable truth, meaning a transparent, universally recognized source of truth, a ledger that everyone believes in, then those two things work really, really well together. Because if you have scalable intelligence without a common source of truth, that's really scary. And if you have a common source of truth but can't scale it, that's kind of boring and inefficient. So two examples where that works. And interestingly, one example is where they complement each other. One example is where they offset each other necessarily. So the complement each other example is there's wonderful work happening at MIT around cancer research. So a typical scientist will decide, okay, I think this chemical compound might cure this type of cancer. And they'll model it out. They'll go buy a data set that they can test it with, and they'll conduct the experiment. And let's say now with modern advances, they could do that. They used to do it 2 times a day. They can do it 20. I'm making up the numbers. But in theory, an AI agent could do 5 billion of those tests per day. But it doesn't want to go out and buy 5 billion tranches of data, and it can't do it on existing financial rails, right? Try having your AI agent open up a bank account at Citi. It's going to be very, very difficult. Crypto can be the financial layer that all those transactions occur at scale. And so you have an AI agent on the data vendor side speaking to an AI agent on the scientist side, millions of times a day, being able to create, transact, and complete an experiment, and just mathematically, we will cure more cancer at that pace, right? So that's a very clear example of AI agents will do things in a scalable nature, in a scalable way that the existing financial rails just cannot support. And so therefore, the AI is useless without the blockchain. On the flip side, I'm on the board of a really cool company called SureMark, which is trying to solve the identity issue using blockchain. So with scalable intelligence comes infinitely scalable and cheap ability to distort digital reality. And we all know where that's going. I argue that socially or from a government perspective, if we don't have a way to counteract that, we will, I don't think we can shut down AI advancement, but we will work to shut down AI advancement. If it gets to a point where we can't trust anything that we engage with digitally. Well, there's companies like SureMark and others that are working on using blockchain as a universal source of truth to assist in delaying the ability for AI to impersonate all of us. And that has to be done fungibly across nation states, right? You can't just go to a passport database. And blockchain is the best solution to be able to do that. So it's going to work together sometimes. It's going to counterweight other things that I think are problematic. And that's just 2 examples of where I see the intersection.
I mean, I would argue that we are past truth. We're in a trust era, right? We're in a post-truth era.
You don't trust me?
I don't.
No?
I trust you, but I don't know if you're telling me the truth. You actually gave some great examples. I even actually want to throw it over to you because you talk quite a lot about agentic commerce. And like, I'd love for you to sort of like walk sort of this group through, like, what is it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's the sexiest combination catchphrase of AI and blockchain coming together in a retail manner. And so I'd love for you to sort of give your vision for where that's going.
So I think first off, everyone's starting to use LLMs more in daily life. And so as an extension of that, using LLMs to gain all sorts of information, you're going to want it to transact, right? You're going to want to be able to take the personalized information you get and to make purchasing decisions. If you think about kind of the first step will be probably linking up to your existing payment methods, so linking up to your cards. But there are a lot of businesses out there, and there's a lot of use cases where we want the money movement to be even more efficient than it is today. Really good examples like microtransactions. Like trying to do microtransactions for subscriptions and certain things, it's very expensive. Like if you try to use traditional rails. I think stable coins, you can move around anywhere in the world for a fraction of a penny. So I do think we're going to see, and you're already looking at the volumes of stablecoins. Stablecoins now represent about 1% of the US dollar supply today. You know, we're going to get to a world where you're going to be transacting more and more with stablecoins, and ultimately wallets are going to be embedded into LLMs. They're going to be embedded to essentially every business. And so, you know, I think really that what we're going to see is, you know, your ability to assign an AI agent to make decisions on your behalf, to make person decisions on your behalf, and it's going to orchestrate those decisions using these financial rails more efficiently than the rails of the past.
And so, and Lila, just going to you, right? Like, you and I were talking about Sora earlier, right? Like, can you just walk me through like your fear of like where this is going in watermarking and?
Well, it's not so much fear, it's a reality, right? And this is going back to what John was saying, right? Is that, you know, what is the source of truth? And, you know, we saw this at Wikipedia, right? Is how do you actually get to the bare facts? And you see this on Wikipedia. It's really interesting because you see it on articles that are contested, you know, they're about some political events, or more likely about a political figure where everybody is trying to edit and add things that they believe about that person to the, so that at the very end, you only get to the very, very basic facts, you know, where they were born, what have they actually done, you know, things that are provable. It's really hard to do because we live in the world now not only of opinions, but actually imagination, which is not necessarily a bad thing. By the imagination is fantastic, but then, you know, you can't separate imagination from reality, right? And we used to say, do not believe anything that you look at on the web unless you go to the primary source, which is who wrote it. So we talk about AI as, you know, watermarking. So Sora watermarks the AI. You were telling me the story that you were watching this video that looked extremely realistic. It looked very scary, and then at the end you didn't realize that it was fake until you saw the Sora, you know, flash at the end. And it's very easy to edit that out and then distribute this, and people will believe this. And by the way, we are extremely programmable LLMs within our heads.
I know.
Right? So it's really easy to program. We know this because social media programs us. We have a whole generation of people now that are programmed to the length of the video on TikTok, right? That's their attention span. So this is where the danger lies. And I have been an advocate for watermarking everything that's actually written by a human. That's what we should watermark. And by the way, we should have the data provenance all the way down to who wrote it and when. And to do that, you need to have an information supply chain.
Yep.
And how you're going to get an information supply chain is what I was saying, which is, you know, you need something like a blockchain, but that needs to be extremely, even more efficient than micropayments. That needs to be a hyper-efficient, hyper-scalable supply chain.
Okay,
Just to touch on that a little more. So crypto is essentially programmable money, and I think one of the most important use cases you're going to see really play out is smart contracts. Smart contracts are essentially if this, then that. Most people probably in this audience have heard of Polymarket. Essentially, the entire business is built on smart contracts. So people contribute stable coins into the smart contract based on an oracle of truth, based on the decision binary being yes or no. The payments are dispersed using the blockchain. You can imagine that essentially set of smart contracts is essentially the layer which stable coins and money is going to work with. So there'll be all sorts of different scenarios when you're shopping online or you're giving actions to an AI agent where it's going to just directly interact with the smart contract.
Yeah, so Lila brings up this video that I saw this morning. It was a protester I was flipping through Reels, and it was a protester in Portland screaming in the face of an ICE agent. Then he kept on saying, "What's your name? What's your name? Sergeant, what's your name? What's your name?" Screaming, and it was so real. And then the ICE agent takes out pepper spray, it sprays him in the face, and goes, "Sergeant Pepper," and the guy goes tumbling down, and it was a scary video, and it was I'm 20 years in media. I was convinced by it until it said Sora on it, and then it really was the first time that I felt completely duped. And to your point, the tech is getting so good that you cannot distinguish where it's going.
And I'll throw, so the visual tech is obviously very, very good. I think even more importantly than it being good, because those technologies to manipulate video have been around for a while. It's cheaper and scalable.
Yes.
What scares me more is and I lump myself into this, I'm not judging anyone, our willingness to provide all of the personal information and data and examples of our thinking into the general pool of knowledge, such that you can scrape and replicate at a light level your personality. So manipulating your image or video.
Wait, why'd you choose him?
I'm just picking this guy here because he's looking at me.
You just like him?
So
you didn't like the guy next to him?
He's paying attention.
Okay,
What else on the phone? He's
fine.
paying attention.
So if you pay attention, he'll pick on you next.
So this gentleman, we don't know each other. It wouldn't be that hard for someone to falsify your image to convince me that we've met. But let's say you and I have a chat in the back room, and you tell me a little bit about yourself. It's very likely, given that we don't know each other, and you're not going to go deep on your personality with me, that it's very likely that you provided enough information to the internet that I can scrape it and I can replicate who you are to someone like me. I'm not going to fool your daughter or your wife or your spouse, but probably fool me, and in real time. And I'll just tell one quick story because it scared me a little bit. There's a hedge fund that I'm friendly with, and they're small. They're as far as hedge funds, like a $100 million hedge fund down in Miami. They got targeted in a very sophisticated scam where the CFO got a call, one of those typical oh, wire the money now call. But what she swears up and down, left, right, and center is the person on the other end sounded like her heavily accented, very specifically accented boss, who we've all known for a long time, and was able to answer questions. That because she sensed something was up, and she was like, hey, and because he speaks a lot, the AI was able to answer questions enough that she almost sent the wire. And thankfully, she just paused for a second and called up his cell phone. That scares me more than digital manipulation. Personality manipulation starts to distort the reality coefficient. And that I'm not sure how to solve for, but I know that we need, look, what do I use in my family? I use a code word. My daughters know if anyone ever says, "Daddy's hurt and needs to pick you up," if they don't say the code word, run to the police. So blockchain and digital hashing could be a form of family code word. And that's why I'm confident it'll complement AI as opposed to
Hold on. So again, I don't want to scare this audience for a second. We have to. I know he's petrified. You see, you thought it was a compliment, right? You're happy that he didn't choose you, right? One thing to remember, right? There's no technology that can be used for good that can't be used for bad, and vice versa, right? So I need to sort of level set on that.
Well, let me play devil's advocate. 30 seconds. Devil's advocate. Just play opposite devil's advocate. Photoshop's been around for 18 years, 19 years. But photographic evidence is still used in courts of law, right? So Photoshop didn't destroy our view of photos.
Yep. And I would say for everyone who says we've never seen change like this before, I'll give you a real example. Between 1879 and 1905, the airplane, the light bulb, the telephone, and the automobile were all invented, right? So between 1879 and 1905, the light bulb, airplane, telephone, automobile. Picture that. So if you died in 1878, you don't know a world that knows those inventions. If you're born in 1906, you know the world that knows those inventions. We have not seen the second, third, fourth order magnitude of what these technologies can do, for good or bad. Right now, we're kind of like in 1910, where people are sitting on the sidelines saying, "I'll stick with my horse. I don't need that automobile thing," right? But going to you for a second on the institution side, and I just want to hit on this because you have to be using AI and blockchain. Coinbase is sitting on so much, billions upon billions of dollars. How are you using it to shape risk management and stuff of that nature?
Well, I know for a fact that's because it's public that our CEO said to the developers, if you don't use AI in coding, I'm firing you. Right? He's kind of said that more or less. So I know that there's embracing AI for improving efficiency. I'm paraphrasing. Don't quote me on that. But I think one of the ways that it's very clear AI is going to be useful is if we believe, so traditional financial rails have an on-ramp system that's similar to a toll booth, right? You to get on the highway, you have to stop and pay a toll. And by that, opening up an account is arduous and painful. And they do all their background checks and AML and everything. That's not going to work in the future. And there's a smarter guy than me, Chris Giancarlo, who's chair of the CFTC, who has a thesis, and I agree, that what's going to happen is the toll booth's going to go away. So you'll be allowed onto the freeway much more easily. But we still have to make sure that people aren't speeding and murdering and driving erratically. The AI overlay system is going to be the AML overseer. So it's going to be, I use the phrase voluntarily dystopian, because it is going to be, they're going to have to, it's going to watch everything we do, because everything we do will be transparent on blockchain. It'll watch our actions, not who we are. And it hopefully, which seems fair in theory, will judge people based on their actions. So you're not a higher risk because you're from a list of countries that ESMA and the EU have decided is high risk. You are higher risk because your actions prove that you're an untrustworthy person. And in some ways, I could see it being dystopian and scary, but in theory, that should be fairer. Certainly fairer than I'm going to judge you because of where you're born. I should judge you based on your financial actions.
Can you stop picking on him?
No. This guy and I got some. Yeah.
I think that dystopian view is a little bit scary because obviously on-chain everything is public. I do think there are some new innovations around zero-knowledge proofs, and essentially what that will enable you to do is to have some semblance of privacy.
Yep.
And I think we are going to see, I think everyone right now is defaulting to everything being open and public, but we are starting to see some of the new blockchains and some of the new additions in terms of layer 2 being able to solve some of these core issues around privacy. If we want to make this solution fully globally scalable, in a way that isn't creating the scary dystopian future that you just described.
So we have a minute and a half left. What I'd like to ask each of you is since we've gone so dark, okay? We need to rebound for a second, okay? What would be your one bit of advice to the positive to look for or to think about in this future that is getting smarter, faster, and more efficient?
Oh, you'll
go
be
right down.
If God came down and said you could roll the dice again and be born at any other time in history, I'd pick right now. You'd be insane not to pick right now. So that's my first step. It's going to be fantastic and wonderful and more efficient. And I guess I'll go back to my point. Photoshop didn't destroy our ability to view photos as real. So I think we don't underestimate our capacity as a species to adjust to these step changes. And you'd be insane not to choose to be born today.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think, look, all new technology is scary. If we go back in years, the amount of rejection and fear-mongering about any technology that came, throughout the centuries has just been enormous. And this is a big one, right? This is a massive wave that we're living through. Sometimes it's a little bit, in my opinion, overhyped versus, underhyped. Sometimes it's underhyped. But at the end of the day, this is going to be able to unlock things that we've never been able to do before. And that is because the capacity of a human brain is extremely limited. Just the number of facts that we can hold in this head is fairly small. Now, AI allows us to take all of the information out there, compress it into a single system, and then use it for a variety of different areas. So we're at the very front end of being able to unlock a lot more prosperity, a lot more health. This is an incredible opportunity. We just need to be mindful about how we go about it.
Yeah, I'm super optimistic. I really see AI as a COO in your pocket. You can essentially ask it anything, and it will give you incredible ways for you to become more productive. But I think crypto is very an abstract term. I think the best thing everyone in this audience could do is actually go and download a wallet. Don't have to download the Moonpay wallet. You could download a whole range of wallets. You can even download the Coinbase wallet. But I do think there's an aha moment when you...
Or Moonpay.
We do.
Or
Hold on. We like you sometimes.
That was a beautiful moment.
It was a beautiful moment, right?
So-
Don't put that on social, Sean.
We're getting in trouble.
Just for this audience.
But I definitely, just recommend everyone go download a wallet, go interact and put money inside of a wallet and connect it to a decentralized application, connect it to something like Polymarket and be like, wait, this could be the future of commerce. Now it will start to click in a way versus just talking at an abstract level. That's the first thing I tell people to do is just go actually try and use it.
So when I was at Wired, Kevin Kelly, one of the founders, had this great saying that I will leave you all with, which was, the future is determined by optimists and defined by optimists. And I think that I want to thank the three of you today for your time. This was a wonderful conversation, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank this guy right here.